There is a lie that has quietly stolen more dreams than failure ever could. It is a lie so common that millions of people accept it as wisdom. It sounds reasonable. It sounds safe. It even sounds responsible. The lie is this: I will start when I feel ready. Some of you have been telling yourselves that for years. You will start the business when you feel ready. You will write the book when you feel ready. You will launch the ministry when you feel ready. You will apply for the opportunity when you feel ready. You will obey God when you feel ready. Yet somehow the feeling never arrives. The months become years. The years become decades. And one day people wake up wondering where all the time went. I want to begin by asking you a serious question. How many opportunities have you missed because you felt unprepared? Think about that. Not because you lacked ability, not because God had not given you the gift, not because the opportunity never came, but because you convinced yourself that you needed a little more confidence, a little more knowledge, a little more certainty before you could move. Many people believe they are waiting for the right moment, but in reality they are waiting for a feeling. They are waiting to feel confident. They are waiting to feel fearless. They are waiting to feel certain. They are waiting to feel qualified. The problem is that life does not work that way. Purpose does not work that way. Faith certainly does not work that way. Let me ask you another question. How many prayers are waiting for your obedience? We often ask God to open doors, but what if God is waiting for us to walk through the doors He has already opened? We ask God for direction, yet we refuse to take the first step. We ask God for increase, yet we hesitate when opportunities appear. We ask God for growth, yet we resist the very challenges that produce it. The truth is that most people are not stuck because they lack talent. They are not stuck because they lack intelligence. They are not stuck because they lack resources. They are stuck because they have become addicted to waiting. Waiting for perfect conditions, waiting for perfect timing, waiting for perfect confidence, waiting for perfect certainty. The tragedy is that while they are waiting, life keeps moving. Opportunities keep passing. Seasons keep changing. Doors keep opening and closing. The world rewards movement, not hesitation. History remembers action, not intention. Nobody is celebrated for what they plan to do. People are remembered for what they actually did. Think about the people you admire most. The successful entrepreneur, the influential leader, the great athlete, the impactful preacher, the person making a difference in the world. We often see their confidence today and assume they always had it. We see their success and assume they always believed in themselves. We see their results and assume they always knew exactly what they were doing. But if you could go back and look at the beginning of their journey, you would discover something surprising. Most of them were afraid. Most of them had doubts. Most of them felt unqualified. Most of them did not know exactly how things would work out. The difference is that they moved anyway. That is why I want to challenge something many people believe. Confidence does not come before action. Confidence comes because of action. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is movement in the presence of fear. Strength is not developed before the battle. Strength is developed during the battle. Imagine a child learning to walk. That child does not wait until they feel completely confident. They stumble, they fall, they get back up. They stumble again, they fall again. Yet with every step they become stronger. With every attempt they become more capable. Eventually what once seemed impossible becomes natural. The same principle applies to every area of life. Nobody starts ready. Nobody begins with complete confidence. Nobody begins with all the answers. The people who succeed simply decide that growth is more important than comfort. They decide that progress is more important than perfection. Now consider the words found in Ecclesiastes chapter 11, verse 4. Whoever watches the wind will not plant. What a powerful statement. Think about the wisdom contained in those few words. The farmer who waits for perfect weather will never put seed in the ground. There will always be another reason to delay. There will always be another concern. There will always be another uncertainty. If the farmer studies every cloud, every gust of wind, every possibility of failure, eventually the planting season passes, the opportunity is gone. The harvest never comes, not because the farmer lacked seed, not because the land was unavailable, not because God withheld the harvest. The harvest was lost because action was delayed. Isn't that exactly what happens to many people today? They keep studying the wind. They keep analyzing every risk. They keep imagining every possible problem. They keep waiting for certainty that life can never provide. Meanwhile, the opportunity to plant slips away. The enemy of your purpose is not always failure. Sometimes it is hesitation. Sometimes it is endless preparation. Sometimes it is the belief that one more course, one more book, one more year, one more sign is all you need before you begin. Yet there comes a moment when preparation must end and action must begin. What if the breakthrough you are praying for is waiting on the other side of a step you refuse to take? What if the confidence you desire is hidden inside the action you keep postponing? What if the answers you seek can only be discovered while moving forward? The reality is that readiness is not a feeling. Readiness is a decision. It is the decision to trust God even when you cannot see the whole path. It is the decision to move even when fear whispers in your ear. It is the decision to obey even when you feel inadequate. It is the decision to start before every doubt has disappeared. And that is why the people who change their lives are not always ready. They simply move before they feel ready. They understand that waiting for perfect confidence is a trap. They understand that growth happens during the journey, not before it. They understand that God often reveals the next step only after they have taken the first one. So today I want you to confront the biggest lie holding you back. Stop telling yourself that you will begin when you feel ready. Stop allowing your future to be controlled by your emotions. Stop giving fear the authority to decide the direction of your life. Because if you keep waiting to feel ready, you may spend your entire life waiting. And the truth is this: the moment that changes everything is often the moment you decide to move before you feel prepared. The question we must answer now is this: if waiting to feel ready is such a dangerous trap, why do so many people remain trapped in it? Why do intelligent, gifted, capable people spend years standing at the edge of their potential without ever stepping into it? The answer is deeper than most people realize. Furthermore, many people are not waiting because they lack ability. They are waiting because they are afraid. Fear has an incredible way of disguising itself as wisdom. It rarely announces itself openly. Instead, it whispers things like, maybe next year, maybe after I learn a little more, maybe after I save more money, maybe after I become more confident. The voice sounds reasonable, but beneath all those excuses is often one simple reality: fear. Fear of failure has buried countless dreams. People imagine what could go wrong before they ever consider what could go right. They picture rejection before acceptance. They picture loss before victory. They picture embarrassment before growth. As a result, they convince themselves that standing still is safer than moving forward. The problem is that standing still is not actually safe. Every day you refuse to move toward your purpose, you are losing something you can never recover. You are losing time, you are losing opportunities, you are losing experiences that could have shaped your future. While you remain frozen by fear, life continues moving. Think about how many people have postponed their dreams because they were afraid of failing publicly. They worry about what others might say. They worry about criticism. They worry about looking foolish. Yet the people they admire most have all experienced failure at some point. Failure is not proof that you should stop. Failure is often proof that you are finally moving. What is fascinating is that most successful people do not avoid failure. They simply refuse to let failure have the final word. They understand that every mistake contains a lesson. Every setback contains wisdom. Every challenge contains growth. What destroys most people is not failure itself. It is the fear of failure. Meanwhile, another powerful reason people keep waiting is the fear of judgment. Human beings naturally want acceptance. Nobody enjoys criticism. Nobody enjoys being misunderstood. Nobody enjoys becoming the target of negative opinions. Yet if you allow the opinions of others to control your decisions, you will never fully step into God's purpose for your life. Consider how many people never start the business because family members doubt them. How many people never pursue ministry because friends question them? How many people never write the book because they fear negative reviews? How many people never obey God's calling because they are worried about what others might think? The truth is that every significant person in history faced criticism. Every leader, every innovator, every world changer, every servant of God. Criticism is often the price of significance. If you try to avoid all criticism, you may also avoid your calling. Moreover, there is another hidden enemy that keeps people waiting. It is called perfectionism. Perfectionism sounds noble on the surface. People say they want excellence. They say they want quality. They say they want everything to be right before they begin. But often perfectionism is simply fear wearing a professional suit. Perfectionists spend years preparing for things that could have been started months ago. They keep revising plans. They keep making adjustments. They keep waiting for ideal circumstances. Yet perfection never arrives. There is always another improvement to make. There is always another adjustment to consider. At some point, you must realize that excellence grows through action, not through endless delay. You improve by doing. You learn by doing. You gain confidence by doing. The road becomes clearer while you are walking it. Now let's look at a powerful example from Scripture. In Exodus chapter 4, verse 10 to 12, Moses stood before God and began listing reasons why he was unqualified. Moses focused on his weaknesses. Moses focused on his limitations. Moses focused on what he believed he lacked. Listen carefully to what Moses was really saying. He was saying, God, I am not ready. How many times have we done exactly the same thing? We tell God that we need more experience. We tell God we need more confidence. We tell God we need more resources. We tell God we need more preparation. Meanwhile, God is looking at the potential He placed inside us and wondering when we will finally trust Him. God's response to Moses is remarkable. God did not argue with every insecurity. God did not spend hours trying to convince Moses of his abilities. Instead, God reminded Moses who was sending him. The issue was never Moses' qualifications. The issue was God's power. That same truth applies to us today. The greatest limitation in your life may not be your lack of ability. It may be your lack of belief. You keep looking at yourself while God is asking you to look at Him. You keep measuring your weaknesses while God is pointing to His strength. Notice something important. Moses eventually became one of the greatest leaders in biblical history. The man who said he could not speak became the man who confronted Pharaoh. The man who doubted himself became the man who led a nation. The man who felt unprepared became the man through whom God performed extraordinary miracles. His transformation did not begin when he felt ready. His transformation began when he obeyed. That is a lesson every person in this room needs to hear. You do not have to feel ready before you move. You simply need to be willing. God has always done extraordinary things through ordinary people who chose obedience over excuses. Therefore, ask yourself honestly, what have you been using as an excuse? What dream have you delayed? What opportunity have you ignored? What calling have you postponed? What step have you refused to take because you felt unprepared? Because the truth may be uncomfortable, but it is necessary. The life you want may be waiting on the other side of the fear you refuse to confront. The future you desire may be hidden behind the excuse you continue to repeat. The breakthrough you seek may begin the moment you stop waiting for readiness and start embracing obedience. And once you understand why you've been waiting, you can finally begin breaking free from the cycle that has held so many people back for years. Now that we understand why people keep waiting, we need to confront another dangerous misconception. Many people believe God only uses extraordinary people. They assume God works through those who are naturally gifted, naturally confident, naturally talented, or naturally qualified. Because of that belief, they spend years disqualifying themselves before God ever does. The truth is that if God only used perfect people, the Bible would be empty. Take a moment and think about that. The very people we admire throughout Scripture were deeply flawed individuals. They had weaknesses, they had fears, they had doubts, they made mistakes, yet God still used them, not because they were perfect, but because they were available. One of the greatest traps in life is comparing your weaknesses to someone else's strengths. You look at successful people and assume they have always been strong. You see the finished product, but never the process. You see the victory, but never the struggle. You see the platform, but never the preparation. What you often fail to realize is that many of the people God used most powerfully started exactly where you are right now. They questioned themselves. They doubted themselves. They wondered whether they were capable. They worried about their shortcomings. Yet somehow they found the courage to move forward anyway. Consider Gideon. When God called him, Gideon did not see a mighty warrior. He saw an insecure man hiding from his circumstances. In Judges chapter 6 verse 15, Gideon essentially told God that he had chosen the wrong person. Gideon looked at his family background, he looked at his limitations, he looked at his weaknesses. Isn't that exactly what many people do today? When opportunity appears, they immediately begin listing reasons why they are unqualified. They focus on what they lack instead of what God can provide. They focus on their history instead of their potential. They focus on their fears instead of God's promises. Yet God looked at Gideon and saw something Gideon could not see in himself. God saw a leader hidden inside a fearful man. God saw courage hidden inside insecurity. God saw greatness hidden inside weakness. That should encourage someone listening right now. Just because you cannot see your potential does not mean God cannot. Just because you feel inadequate does not mean you are incapable. Just because you have weaknesses does not mean God cannot use you. Many times your greatest limitation exists only in your own mind. Likewise, think about David. Before David became king, before he defeated Goliath, before songs were written about his victories, he was simply a shepherd boy overlooked by nearly everyone around him. In 1 Samuel chapter 16 verse 11 to 13, when the prophet Samuel came searching for the future king, David was not even invited to the gathering. Imagine that. His own family did not consider him important enough to be included. How many people know what that feels like? To be overlooked, to be underestimated, to be ignored, to watch others receive opportunities while you remain unseen. Yet while people were overlooking David, God was preparing David. While others saw insignificance, God saw royalty. While others saw a shepherd, God saw a king. Never allow the opinions of people to become greater than the vision God has for your life. Some of the greatest people in history began as individuals who were underestimated. Some of the greatest leaders started as unknowns. Some of the greatest success stories began with people who were told they would never amount to much. What made the difference? They refused to let their current condition determine their future possibilities. Similarly, consider Peter. Peter is one of the most relatable figures in Scripture because he was far from perfect. He was impulsive, he was emotional, he often spoke before thinking. He made mistakes in public, he experienced failures that everyone could see, yet Jesus still chose him. That fact alone should transform the way you see yourself. God was fully aware of Peter's weaknesses before calling him. Nothing surprised him, nothing caught him off guard. Peter's imperfections were not hidden from God. The same is true for you. God knows every weakness you have. He knows every fear. He knows every insecurity. He knows every mistake. Yet he still calls people. He still assigns purpose. He still opens doors. He still creates opportunities. The reason is simple. God is not searching for flawless people. He is searching for faithful people. This truth becomes even clearer in Matthew chapter 14, verse 28 to 31. Peter stepped out of the boat and walked on water. Most people focus on the moment Peter sank, but think about what actually happened. Peter became the only disciple willing to leave the safety of the boat. The others watched. Peter moved. The others analyzed. Peter acted. The others remained comfortable. Peter stepped into the impossible. Was Peter perfect? No. Did Peter have doubts? Yes. Did Peter make mistakes? Absolutely. But Peter experienced something the others never experienced because he was willing to step out. That is one of the most important lessons you will ever learn. Imperfect action will take you farther than perfect intentions. Far too many people spend their lives sitting safely in the boat. They watch others pursue their dreams. They watch others answer God's call. They watch others grow. They watch others take risks. Meanwhile, they remain exactly where they started. The greatest tragedy is not making mistakes. The greatest tragedy is never trying. You do not need to become perfect before God can use you. You do not need to eliminate every weakness before pursuing your purpose. You do not need to wait until every fear disappears. The heroes of Scripture were not extraordinary because they lacked flaws. They were extraordinary because they trusted God despite their flaws. That is what makes their stories powerful. Their victories prove what God can do through ordinary people who choose obedience over excuses. Therefore, stop disqualifying yourself. Stop focusing on everything you are not. Stop measuring yourself against people who are years ahead of you. Stop allowing insecurity to speak louder than God's calling, because God has never been limited by human weakness. In fact, throughout history, He has often displayed His greatest power through people who felt least qualified. And perhaps the greatest obstacle standing between you and your future is not your imperfection. Perhaps it is the belief that your imperfection makes you unusable. The moment you stop believing that lie is the moment you become available for God to do something extraordinary through your life. Having established that God uses imperfect people, we now need to talk about another silent dream killer that has stopped more destinies than lack of talent ever could. It is called overthinking. Some people are not trapped by fear alone. They are trapped by analysis. They think about everything so much that they never actually do anything. They examine every possibility, calculate every risk, imagine every problem, and predict every disaster until they become completely paralyzed. Have you ever noticed how the mind can create obstacles that do not even exist yet? A person gets an idea for a business and within minutes imagines it failing. Someone feels called to start a ministry and immediately begins imagining criticism. Someone wants to write a book and suddenly starts thinking about negative reviews from people who have not even read it. Someone wants to pursue a dream and before taking a single step, they have already created 10 reasons why it might not work. The mind is a powerful tool, but when left unchecked, it can become a prison. Furthermore, many people believe they are being wise when they overthink. They tell themselves they are simply being cautious. They call it planning. They call it preparation. They call it research. But there is a difference between preparation and paralysis. Preparation moves you closer to action, while paralysis keeps you stuck in the same place. Some individuals have spent years preparing for a future they never enter. They have read the books, attended the seminars, taken the courses, watched the videos, and gathered the information. Yet despite all their knowledge, they remain exactly where they started because knowledge without action changes nothing. Think about how many people know what they should do but never actually do it. They know they should start exercising. They know they should begin saving money. They know they should develop their skills. They know they should answer God's calling. They know they should take the first step. The issue is rarely a lack of information. The issue is a lack of movement. One of the greatest lies overthinking tells us is that clarity comes before action. We convince ourselves that once we understand everything, then we will move. Once every question is answered, then we will begin. Once every uncertainty disappears, then we will step forward. But life does not work that way. Clarity often comes because of action. Direction often appears because of movement. Wisdom often develops because of experience. Many roads become visible only after you begin walking them. That is why Proverbs chapter 3 verse 5 to 6 gives us such powerful guidance. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight. Notice what the scripture does not say. It does not say understand everything first. It does not say eliminate every uncertainty first. It does not say figure out the entire journey before taking a step. It says trust. Trust requires faith. Trust requires movement. Trust requires surrender. Moreover, if God revealed every detail of your future before you started, faith would not be necessary. Yet many people are demanding certainty from a God who asks for trust. They want guarantees before obedience. They want answers before action. They want the entire map before taking the first step. Meanwhile, God is saying, move and I will guide you. One reason overthinking is so dangerous is because it creates an illusion of progress. Thinking feels productive. Planning feels productive. Research feels productive. Yet none of those things produce results unless they eventually lead to action. You can spend 10 years thinking about swimming and still drown the moment you enter deep water if you never learned how to swim. Experience teaches lessons that theory never can. The entrepreneur learns by building. The writer learns by writing. The speaker learns by speaking. The leader learns by leading. The servant of God learns by serving. Growth happens in motion. Consider this. Imagine trying to steer a parked car. No matter how much you turn the steering wheel, the vehicle remains in the same place. The moment the car starts moving, however, direction becomes possible. Life works the same way. God often steers moving people. He often redirects people who are taking action. He often opens doors for people who are already walking forward. But if you remain parked, waiting for complete certainty, you may never experience the direction you are seeking. This is why so many opportunities are missed. People spend so much time deciding whether they should move that the opportunity passes them by. Someone else, less qualified but more willing, takes the chance and discovers what was possible. It is not always the most talented person who succeeds. It is often the person willing to act. Let me ask you something. What would you attempt if fear were not making your decisions? What dream would you pursue? What goal would you chase? What conversation would you have? What opportunity would you seize? For many people, the answer appears immediately. Deep down, you already know what God has been placing on your heart. You already know the step you've been postponing. You already know the opportunity you've been avoiding. The issue is not that you lack direction. The issue is that you keep allowing fear to disguise itself as caution. You keep allowing hesitation to disguise itself as wisdom. You keep allowing overthinking to disguise itself as preparation. Eventually, there comes a moment when you must stop studying the path and start walking it. There comes a moment when you must stop waiting for certainty and start trusting God. There comes a moment when you must stop asking, what if I fail? And start asking, what if God is calling me to something greater than I can currently imagine? Because overthinking never created a success story. Overthinking never fulfilled a purpose. Overthinking never changed a life. Action does, faith does, obedience does. The people who accomplish extraordinary things are rarely those who have all the answers. They are those who decide that trusting God is more important than understanding everything. Once you break free from the trap of overthinking, you become ready for the next lesson, understanding that faith was never designed to sit still. Faith was designed to move. Now we arrive at one of the most important truths you will ever learn. Faith was never designed to be passive. Faith was never meant to sit comfortably on the sidelines. Faith was never intended to be something we talk about without acting upon. Real faith moves. Many people say they trust God, but the evidence of trust is movement. The evidence of belief is action. The evidence of faith is obedience. It is easy to claim faith when nothing is required of you. It is easy to speak about trusting God when no risk is involved. It is easy to quote scriptures when everything feels comfortable. The true test of faith comes when God asks you to step beyond what feels safe. However, that is where many people struggle. They want certainty before they move. They want guarantees before they obey. They want visible results before they take the first step. But faith does not operate according to human logic. Faith requires you to move before the evidence appears. This is why so many people remain stuck. They are waiting for confidence to arrive before they act. They are waiting for courage to appear before they step forward. They are waiting for certainty before they obey. Yet confidence often comes after movement. Courage often grows during movement. Direction often appears through movement. The people who experience God's power most deeply are often the people who are willing to move before they fully understand how everything will work out. Think about the moments in your own life when you grew the most. Chances are growth did not happen during periods of comfort. Growth happened when you stepped into unfamiliar territory. Growth happened when you accepted challenges. Growth happened when you trusted God despite uncertainty. Faith has always required movement. This principle appears throughout Scripture. God rarely revealed the entire journey before asking people to begin. Instead, He often gave enough direction for the next step and expected obedience. Many people wish God would provide a complete blueprint for their future. They want every detail explained. They want every obstacle removed. They want every question answered. But if God showed you everything at once, there would be no need for faith. Faith requires trusting God's character when you cannot fully see His plan. One of the most powerful examples of this principle is found in Matthew chapter 14, verse 29. Peter is standing in a boat during a storm. The waves are crashing, the wind is blowing, the conditions are far from ideal. Yet in the middle of that storm, Jesus calls Peter to come. Think about the significance of that moment. Peter had a choice. He could stay where he was. He could remain in the safety of the boat. He could continue doing what everyone else was doing. Or he could step into uncertainty. Imagine the thoughts running through Peter's mind. Imagine the fear. Imagine the doubts. Imagine the questions. What if I sink? What if I fail? What if this doesn't work? What if I look foolish? Those are the same questions many people ask today. What if the business fails? What if the ministry struggles? What if the opportunity doesn't work out? What if people criticize me? What if I make mistakes? Nevertheless, Peter could have spent hours analyzing those questions. He could have remained safely inside the boat, discussing possibilities. Instead, he stepped out. That single decision changed everything. Notice something important. Peter did not receive confidence before stepping onto the water. He gained confidence because he stepped onto the water. Many people want the experience of walking on water without first leaving the boat. But miracles happen outside the boat. Growth happens outside the boat. Purpose is discovered outside the boat. Your greatest opportunities are often waiting beyond the boundaries of your comfort zone. The boat represents safety. The boat represents familiarity. The boat represents predictability. The boat represents excuses. The boat represents every reason people give for remaining where they are. Yet God never intended the boat to become a permanent residence. At some point, every person who wants to grow must leave the boat. For some people, the boat is fear. For others, it is insecurity. For others, it is past failure. For others, it is the need for approval. For others, it is comfort. Whatever your boat may be, the principle remains the same. You cannot experience what God has prepared for you while refusing to move beyond what is familiar. Sadly, many people spend years praying for opportunities they are unwilling to pursue. They pray for open doors, but hesitate when those doors appear. They pray for increase, but resist the challenges that produce growth. They pray for change, but cling to the habits that keep them stuck. Faith requires more than agreement. Faith requires action. Imagine a farmer standing in an empty field praying for a harvest while refusing to plant seeds. No matter how sincere the prayer may be, the harvest cannot come without action. Likewise, many people are praying for outcomes that require obedience. They want confidence, and God says move. They want growth, and God says move. They want purpose, and God says move. They want breakthrough, and God says move. Throughout Scripture, God repeatedly responds to movement. The Jordan River parted after people stepped forward. The walls of Jericho fell after people marched. The miracle appeared after obedience. The breakthrough followed action. This is why faith is not merely believing that God can do something. Faith is acting as though you believe He will. The longer you walk with God, the more you discover that faith is a journey of continual movement. Every new level requires another step. Every new season requires another act of trust. Every new opportunity requires another decision to move despite uncertainty. You will never eliminate every doubt. You will never remove every risk. You will never possess complete certainty. But you can choose obedience. You can choose action. You can choose faith. And when you do, something remarkable begins to happen. The confidence you were waiting for starts to grow. The courage you thought you lacked starts to develop. The strength you needed begins to emerge. Not because you waited for readiness, but because you moved despite feeling unready. That is the secret many successful people eventually discover. They stop asking whether they feel ready and start asking whether they are willing to trust God enough to take the next step. Once faith begins moving, something powerful follows: discipline. Because while faith may get you started, discipline is what keeps you moving long after emotions fade. Having understood that faith requires movement, we must now confront another reality that separates those who merely start from those who actually finish. Faith may get you moving, but discipline keeps you moving. One of the greatest misconceptions in our generation is the belief that successful people are constantly motivated. Many people look at high achievers and assume they wake up every day feeling inspired, energized, and excited. They imagine that successful people possess some special emotional advantage that ordinary people do not have. The truth is far different. Successful people do not win because they always feel motivated. They win because they have learned how to act even when motivation disappears. Motivation is powerful, but it is unreliable. Some days you wake up feeling unstoppable. Some days you feel ready to conquer every challenge in front of you. Yet there are other days when you feel tired, discouraged, and uninspired. There are days when you question whether the effort is worth it. If your progress depends entirely on your feelings, your progress will always be inconsistent. Feelings change, emotions change, circumstances change, discipline remains. The people who accomplish extraordinary things understand something that most people never learn. They understand that success is rarely determined by what you do occasionally. Success is usually determined by what you do consistently. A single workout will not transform your body. A single prayer will not build a strong spiritual life. A single act of generosity will not create a generous character. A single productive day will not create a successful future. The power lies in repetition. The power lies in consistency. The power lies in showing up again and again, especially when you do not feel like it. That is why discipline is so valuable. Discipline teaches you to honor your commitments even when your emotions are fighting against them. Many people are waiting to feel motivated before they act. Disciplined people act first and allow motivation to catch up later. For example, think about an athlete preparing for competition. The athlete does not train only when training feels enjoyable. If that were the case, progress would be limited. Instead, they train when they feel strong and when they feel weak. They train when conditions are favorable and when conditions are difficult. Why? Because they understand that results belong to those who remain committed. The same principle applies to every area of life. The writer must write when inspiration is present and when it is absent. The entrepreneur must work when excitement is high and when challenges arise. The student must study when learning feels easy and when it feels difficult. The believer must remain faithful when life is good and when life becomes challenging. Consequently, discipline becomes the bridge between intention and accomplishment. Without discipline, dreams remain dreams. Without discipline, goals remain goals. Without discipline, potential remains potential. Discipline transforms possibilities into realities. This principle is clearly seen in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 24 to 27. Athletes willingly embrace discipline because they understand that greatness requires sacrifice. Imagine an athlete saying, "I will only train when I feel motivated." No coach would accept that. No championship would ever be won that way. No meaningful achievement would be possible. Yet many people approach their goals exactly that way. They work only when they feel inspired. They pray only when they feel spiritual. They pursue purpose only when emotions cooperate. Then they wonder why progress remains slow. Moreover, discipline teaches you to keep moving when emotions lose interest. One reason discipline is difficult is because it often feels invisible. The daily actions seem small. The effort appears insignificant. The results are not immediate. You read a few pages today, you save a small amount today, you spend time in prayer today, you improve a skill today, you make one positive choice today. None of those actions appear dramatic. Yet over time, they become transformative. The future is built through small daily decisions repeated consistently. Many people are searching for one big breakthrough while ignoring the small habits that create lasting success. They want immediate results, but God often